One final look at New York City's racetrack. Things have closed down here at the Big A. We open things up at Belmont Park this coming Wednesday, April 29th. Excited to get over to the Taj Mahal of North American racing, and we are off and running not only here on the National Racing Report, but Kentucky Derby Week as well. Richard Migliore, Andy Serling, Jason Blewitt, and it just feels good to be a racing fan, doesn't it?
I'm already bitter. The original opening that we filmed, my picture was on the screens at Aqueduct, and now it's at Derby Day. I'm already upset. The show's ruined for me.
Well, we can pick it up from here, as we're actually going to talk a lot about the Derby. We got a couple races to get to, but then it's going to be more of a preview show, and I'm excited to get into some of this with you, Andy.
There it is. It's back. I'm much better. Everything's good. Thanks, Mitch.
And we'll have your analysis on Belmont late pick fours on NYRA.com, the new look NYRA.com.
Well, we'll have Derby preview. This week we'll be doing a Derby preview. Mike Beer and I, and of course, we'll do a preview of the Preakness as well, and we'll start back with those pick fours later in the month.
All right, I like the sound of that. What about the Big A, our final graded stakes of this spring meet? A short one on the main track, but nonetheless, we closed things down on Sunday, and F&X was in the right place at the right time with a huge effort over his stablemate, Wicked Strong.
I can't help but think about this race as something that you and I, Richie, have talked about so many times. When a horse like the favorite, your Wicked Strong, breaks a length or so slow like that, it's just never a good sign.
No, it just doesn't seem like they're as into it as they should be. So how many times have you seen a horse break alertly, even if they're going to drop back, and that horse runs a huge race?
It's amazing how much you can find out from the break. And it just feels like, I don't know, maybe he wasn't a happy horse, maybe he wasn't ready. And it's not as though every horse that gets left doesn't win. But it gives you a little bit of a sinking feeling. Now, Raj did a terrific job getting him into the race. I don't think it was a monstrously slow pace, but I don't think it was a particularly fast one. At the end of the day, Wicked Strong just didn't have an answer. He wasn't terrible, but he didn't have an answer.
No, he didn't, and he has every opportunity. In spite of the bit of a slow break, he got into the right position. The horse that's on the lead winds up running second. But you can kind of, if you scan through the field, and I always do this as I watch races, and you find F&X, who's laying fifth right now in the blue, you basically saying this horse is going to be very tough to beat the way he's traveling.
I totally agree. I bet a couple dollars on him, and I was watching the race, and I was feeling like, you know what? I think I'm going to win this race. And you could see he was going well. And this is a horse, and Angel Royal has struggled so far at the Aqueduct meet, but he fits this horse like a glove.
Well, I think it's a lot about confidence in the horse you're on. It just seems like he has so much confidence in this horse, and he's allowing the horse to take him there the right way. Like he's up in behind horses. He's going to come out. He's getting kicked back, but he's not reacting to it. He just looked like a winner every step.
And he looks here like he's going to win by a lot more than he does. And I give some credit to Red Rifle, who's a very game horse, especially when he's able to dictate the pace. And he hung in very, very gamely to be second. I don't want to be too hard on Wicked Strong because I think he's overrated by some people going to the race, and he shouldn't have been as heavy a favorite as he was. And we talked about this before the race. I like the fact that he never gave up, Richie. He didn't lose by 5 lengths.
No, he didn't cave in. He kept on kind of plugging along. I'm wondering, and I was always the person last year saying he needs blinkers, he needs blinkers. I'm wondering now, as a 4-year-old, if the blinkers aren't putting him a little more into the race, and it's maybe negating that closing kick of his a little bit.
Well, that's an interesting point. And the question is, does he always need to be in these races? Maybe this one he did, but in theory, eventually, Jay, there will be a race with some pace.
Could it be the Met Mile? I mean, the Excelsior, disappointing effort. He didn't stop, but not a great effort out of this horse, who was beaten a length by Honor Code in the Gulfstream Park Handicap. Do you take a look at the Metropolitan and cut this horse back to a one-turn mile on Belmont Day?
Well, here are the options for him. The options are they could wait and they could run the Stephen Foster, and then they could go to the Whitney, and I'm sure they all want to point towards the Whitney. Or they can run the Met Mile, and I think that gives them the ability to come back 4 weeks later and run the Suburban, and then come back 4 weeks later after that and run in the Whitney.
And I would have to think Jimmy Jerkins likes to stay home. I think he would prefer probably just to lead him over from his barn at Belmont Park. I like the idea of him cutting back. I want to see him get pace, and I want to see him come with one run.
I love it. I completely and totally agree with you, Richie. And he showed in his first race back, when he finished just a length behind Honor Code, that he can be competitive in those kind of races, and maybe he's a horse that just needs time. Can we give a little love to F&X?
Oh, absolutely. How good was he? I mean, this New York bred by Mindshift at a what a pair. And I wasn't here yesterday watching the races, but when I heard Maggie talking about how good he looked, obviously Jimmy Jerkins' horses come to the paddock they're ready to run.
No, I agree, and Jimmy did a terrific job with this horse, and it's a great example of an owner and connections doing the right thing and taking a horse that we all knew last year had ability,
Sure.
but giving him to a top trainer like Jimmy and letting Jimmy do what he does best. And Jimmy took his time, and you can compare this to Wicked Strong. It took Jimmy a little while to get this horse to show his best, but now he's the top of his game, and maybe with some time you'll see that with Wicked Strong this year.
Isn't that old school horsemanship where horses come around over time and then they get to a place and they stay good for a while?
Well, that's the thing, as opposed to horses that are more flashes in the pan that get really good and then they blow up and disappear. I think you'd much prefer to see a horse moving like this, and this is whether it's Jimmy, obviously his father, Shug McGay, trainers like that.
Yep.
107 buyer for FNX. And by the way, the Alan Jerkins collection, a place not to be missed on NYRA.com. It's on the homepage, and what a collection of races, and that's up there for your viewing pleasure. Travis Stone began his new job as the race caller at Churchill Downs, and he was in the booth Saturday night when 3-year-olds broke from the gate in this stake race we're about to look at. Blofeld making his first start since the Nashua last November in the green, the 2 down inside.
Even though he finished third, I thought it was a decent start for a horse. There's obviously some issues not having seen this horse since the beginning of November. And Cinco Charlie, who he beat it in the futurity at Belmont, he maybe was on his home court here, and he's had the benefit of more races, and he was turning back.
Well, that's the thing that stood out to me, how many races Cinco Charlie's had. I mean, he had, 8 as a 2-year-old? That's a comprehensive campaign in this day and age. And what strikes me about Cinco Charlie, and I went back and looked through his pedigree, just how naturally fast he is. This is a serious sprinter. He was basically taking Ricardo Santana there the right way, and his pedigree wouldn't tell you he has that kind of speed, although looking at Indian Charlie's past performances, he was pretty fast.
No, he was
Very
a
high cruising
terrific horse.
speed for Indian Charlie.
You know, I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone who wanted to see the race, but he couldn't see it. And so I was saying, you know, Blofeld's got horse behind him. I said, but Cinco Charlie is traveling very well in the lead. As you know, with the big run-up in the 6 furlong races at Churchill, that's not a particularly fast quarter. Now, we don't know how the track affected things, but seemed like he was in control of the race. I don't think it came up that fast on buyers. I don't like that Blofeld, and maybe it was plodding along on the inside, didn't have a little bit of a run in him.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I watched it over a few times last night thinking about it. And I just think he's a little bit more of like a high cruising speed, one pace kind of horse, albeit fast. Because if you go back and look at his races as a 2-year-old, he just kind of stayed on.
Yeah.
He didn't give you like that acceleration.
No, I don't disagree. When he beat him in the futurity, he made that extended run up the rail, and it really didn't look like he was going to get there. The thing I don't like is he made that run in that race, and in this race he didn't make the run, but maybe he just needed a race off a layoff.
Well, got to knock some ring rust off. I'm sure he probably wasn't as sharp as he's going to be going forward.
Woody Stevens, 7/8. Would you leave him sprinting as of now and then try to stretch him out over the summertime?
Oh, absolutely. They're going to leave him stretching. I mean, obviously, if he won the Woody Stevens and they wanted to stretch, they could go to the Haskell. But right now, he looks like a Woody Stevens Amsterdam King Bishop type horse.
Yeah, I agree.
7 races over an 11-race career thus far for Indian Charlie, or I should say Cinco Charlie, who's by Indian Charlie, as we talk about America's greatest horse race on the National Racing Report. Derby Day at Belmont Park this coming Saturday, a 12-race card, an early first post of noon, a ton of stuff planned aside from the great racing card and 3 stakes on the program, 3 graded stakes. We'll have some music in the spacious backyard, bourbon tasting, barbecue, and more. Love that communal experience at Belmont Park, and we hope to see you out there. It is the National Racing Report on MSG+. Kentucky Derby 141. The long, cold winter is over, and we are set to go at Churchill Downs. Jason Blewitt, Andy Serling, Richard Migliore, welcome back to the show. And are you guys ready to talk about trainer Bob Baffert and his phenom in American Pharaoh?
Well, right now Bob Baffert's holding a pretty strong hand in this Derby, but as we all know, we've seen some other trainers holding strong hands going to Derbies, and the Derby can be a tough race. It doesn't always work out like some people think it looks on paper.
Well, the only thing I will say about that, and I agree, he basically, I think, has the strongest hand since Ben Jones with Citation in Coletown.
Yeah, maybe he does. You know, I'm not sure. You know, looking back, there were some times, you know, it looked like Nick Zito when he had 5 horses. You know, he looked pretty strong. Todd before. We'll see. I'll tell you one thing. I know this horse has done what's ever asked of him, and he probably could have won this race by a little more, though. there's a difference between cruising along against a bunch of horses that are inferior to you and maybe could have gone faster than being under pressure in a race and being able to go faster.
Yeah, I don't disagree, although this time visually, I just have to say, I mean, the way he was geared down and the way he went through the wire, I think he was capable of quite a bit more, and I know you and I differ on that.
But if he's in a situation in the Derby where he's got to be used harder against tougher horses and the pace is more demanding, et cetera, and then he's got to get confronted with horses, is he going to be able to find more than he can in a situation like that?
Well, it's a big question, and that certainly is the question, because I think ability-wise, you have to give him his due. Obviously, he's brilliant. Yeah. But I was, again, going back to looking at Indian Charlie's past performances. Boy, he smacks the Indian Charlie, doesn't he?
He ran third in the Derby.
And he ran third in the Derby, right. So,
and he was a better horse than Real Quiet going in, and nobody would have denied that.
Right, and again, the way the Derby is run, the dynamics of the Derby played against Indian Charlie, just the way it may play against American Pharaoh.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. This horse is carrying the weight of the world. I mean, if you look at social media, I mean, people are coming out of the woodwork declaring the Kentucky Derby already over and buying cars with the money they're going to win on this horse. And I'm going to tell you something. The gods of racing ain't going to let that happen.
Well, you know, it's silly to crown anybody the champion just yet. They do have to confront a 20-horse field, fast-paced race, roughly run race. My opinion on this is I think if he wins the Derby, he's extraordinary because it goes against his style, the way the Derby's run.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm not looking to knock him. I just think it's going to be a much tougher road to hoe than a lot of people think it's going to be. And, you know, people want to compare him to Big Brown. Big Brown, with all due respect, met a very weak field.
Yeah.
This field, as we're going to see in the show, is anything but weak.
Well, this is widely regarded as the deepest Kentucky Derby field in recent memory, correct?
Well, yeah, I don't want to jinx things, but we lost a couple of players in Calculator as well as Texas Red earlier in the year.
Well, don't forget Kozan, too.
Kozan also, but overall, we have not had the rash of defections we've seen in some other years.
Yeah, no, I think it's very deep and it's fun, and hopefully, you know, we've still got a couple days to go before the Derby, and horses are like strawberries. They can go bad overnight. Let's hope everybody gets in the gate from this point on that's planning on it.
No, I agree. It's an exciting time.
And it was a big breeze Sunday morning at Churchill for American Pharaoh. 58-3 with Garcia up 3/4 and 112. And I'll tell you, Twitter, social media, everybody was buzzing, including Jay Primmett of the Racing Form.
I think everybody's talking about it so much he can't possibly win. There's shirts. They're making shirts for him, too. I'm going to get one. I'm going to put it right next to my shirt for California Chrome winning the Triple Crown.
Well, you predicted that he'd win the Derby last year, if I'm not mistaken. You said bet the farm on California Chrome. Well, Bob Baffert does. Yeah, Bob Baffert does have that strong hand, and not only does he have American Pharaoh, the likely favorite, he has got the likely second choice in the unbeaten Dortmund, who will try to become the first horse to win the Kentucky Derby by a Derby-winning sire in Big Brown since Grindstone and Unbridled back in 1996.
It's a good thing horses don't know that they're not getting the respect they deserve, or he'd feel really inferior in the barn, Richie.
Yeah, he would definitely be playing, was it Jan Brady to Marsha? He's a good horse, and he's done it. I think he's battle-tested, and I still think he's going to be better when he has a target. I think he gets lost a little bit when he's by himself on the lead.
Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see at what price this horse is, what price all these horses are, but I just feel like he's got so much more bottom than American Pharaoh, and I know everybody's talking about American Pharaoh's brilliance, but American Pharaoh hasn't faced a good horse in those races, and he was able to control the paces when he won last year in the Chandelier, and I'm not saying there are any monsters behind Dortmund, but that race against Firing Line, I can't get that out of my head.
Firing Line is 10 times, at least 10 times a better horse than anybody American Pharaoh has beat.
I agree.
Hands down.
And the way he came back on him 2 races back, maybe it's because we were there, Richie, but man, that's what a good horse does.
No, that's what a good horse does. When they fight for it like that, and that's what stands him apart to me, Dortmund. Not only is he talented, he's battle-tested. He's taken a punch, and he's come back and kept fighting. And I know Gary Stevens put a lot of heat on himself with Firing Line, saying he moved too soon that day. I think tactically, a normal horse would have wilted under that pressure. Instead, Dortmund came back. He's not a normal horse.
I completely agree with that, Richie. And the other thing is, for me, he's doing it in fast times. He's got buyer figs of 106, 104, 104. 3 races this year, 3 triple-digit buyers, and yet everybody's saying, oh no, everybody in the Baffert barns knows that he couldn't sniff American Pharaoh. Give me a break.
You know, you can't say that. He's a beast of a horse. Now, my concern with that, and I look at everything pros and cons. You know, we've talked about the pros. The cons are, as big as he is, if he does encounter some real traffic or really gets bounced around, is it going to throw him off enough where he's not going to be able to recover? Sometimes big horses aren't as nimble.
I agree. That's a real question. But you know what? The way he fought back inside a firing line. Yeah. But once again, the Derby's a much bigger field. The competition is deeper. We'll find out with him, but I don't want anybody not to give him his due.
Absolutely not. Post will be drawn Wednesday for Derby 141. Let's move on to the Florida Derby crew, the unbeaten Materiality, and of course the hard-trying New York-bred Upstart. There are things to like about both of these horses, and I'll send it over to you guys into the far turn.
Let's first talk about the winner, Materiality. These kind of horses, all races this year, Todd Pletcher, big performances in Florida, they don't historically do well in the Derby. I think Todd is 1 for 60 at Churchill Downs at mile-and-a-quarter over distance races on the dirt. But I don't think you can deny that this horse is brilliantly talented.
No, another horse. I mean, and just again, speaking of how deep this field is, another horse that in another year you'd be going, wow, but now he's got a lot to get past, and he is brilliant. To do this in his third start was brilliant. I just can't see him winning the Kentucky Derby in the fourth start of his life.
Well, he's got more in common than the one-word name with Apollo than just their names are one word. I mean, you've got to go back to 1882 for a horse to win the Derby that did not start as a 2-year-old. That's a long, long time.
And look at Curlin, and maybe it did hurt him in that race. He didn't fire his best shot. I hate when people say, oh, these horses are struggling. They're tired down the stretch. The track was extremely slow. That was a very fast pace when you consider how tiring this track was. And if they were struggling so much, how did they beat the third horse by 12.5 lengths? A horse that had finished just 5 lengths behind a previous start to Carpe Diem, a lot of you were talking about. These are good horses. The reason, and I know you like him too, I like Upstart out of this race, is in Florida, I think Upstart was forced to be on the pace because his main competition were speed types, and he couldn't allow them to have a natural advantage, and he's a good enough horse that he can still run well doing that. Whereas in the Derby, with more pace, they can drop him back where he's most effective, and he can make that one run. This horse has never done anything wrong.
He's never done anything wrong. I think he has the proper amount of foundation to show up on Derby Day. I know there was the hiccup. He had a little bit of an infection, a little bit of a fever, but they caught it early, and everything since then, he's actually kind of blossomed. I think he's actually stepped forward, and I think as tiring as that track was at Gulfstream, it's going to help him when he gets over a more glib Churchill Downs surface.
And no horse has more bottom than Upstart does.
And he's shipped. He's run well at every track that he's raced over since his 2-year-old season. And he strikes me as a relentless kind of horse who just doesn't give up no matter what the circumstances are.
Exactly, Jay. Whatever the circumstances are, he has dealt with them, and he's dealt with them effectively.
And he has shown that ability that a Derby winner needs to be able to make a long, sustained run or 2 distinct runs. And he's done that at different times of his career. That goes a long way to me in making him the horse that I'm on.
This is a horse that ran every bit as well as Wildcat Red did, despite finishing well behind him in third in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile, considering how close he was to the fast pace and how wide he was. He has overcome adversity in races. Not saying he's going to win the race, but he's the kind of horse that can absolutely win it.
Yes.
All right, Todd Pletcher looks to build upon that current 1 for 40 record in the Kentucky Derby. He got that lone victory back 5 years ago in 2010 with Super Saver, and he will look to bring Carpe Diem, who loves Keeneland, out of the Bluegrass, win an overmatched field, and he will look with the likely third choice in the betting to get the Roses.
I know a lot of people like this horse. I just think this is the wrong year to have a horse that's consistently running Beyer figures that are 10 points slower than a lot of different contenders.
I can't disagree with any of that. And the fact of the matter is, he's not going to get this kind of scenario in the Kentucky Derby where he's laying second in the clear, going 12 to every 8th. Now, obviously, another horse with ability, but in this year, I think you're going to need a lot of qualities, not just a great amount of ability, but a toughness and a foundation that I just don't see.
Yeah, listen, you and I, for once, are actually in complete agreement. We don't want to knock this horse. He's obviously a very good horse. This is a tough year to be a very good horse going to the Derby because this is a field full of exceptional racehorses. This is as good a Derby as I have seen in a long, long time and deep.
Is it disconcerting this horse hasn't cracked the 100 or triple-digit Beyer scale at this point, where he's been steady from the mid-80s up through the mid-90s from his first start as a 2-year-old?
It is, and even though it was his first start of the year, he beat Amy's Flatter by 5 lengths with an easy trip. The same horse, the Materiality, and Upstart were 12.5 lengths clear of in the Florida Derby. To me, that's a very meaningful number, and it's backed up by the speed figures.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, he may have a big forward movement in him still. I just have a hard time seeing him deal with what he's going to have to deal with Derby Day. And then let's throw in his temperament. And he has shown a propensity at times to throw a bit of a tantrum in the paddock, throw a bit of a tantrum behind the gate. when you have 150,000 people screaming at you, it can only compound things.
And on a day where he can make no mistakes. A lot of things have to go right. And he's not a 30-to-1 shot. He's going to be in the 10, 12-to-1 range, and he's just not good enough on paper.
Well, that's one of your rules of thumb, taking shortish prices on betting horses on the come. And if you like Carpe Diem, you're saying he's got a forward move in him, and you're likely going to be betting him at around 10-to-1, maybe even a little less, down to 8-to-1. We shall see how he does, and does Tappet, who's accomplished so many things as a stallion, does he have a Kentucky Derby with his name on it? Stay tuned. We're just about set for our 8-mile move east on the Bell Parkway, the opening of beautiful Belmont Park. Wednesday, it is just about here. April 29th, 9-race program will stay with the regular first race post of 1:20 p.m. and that Wednesday card that features the elusive Quality as the 7th race on the turf. Pretty good field. That will be the anchor on that opening day program.
Yeah, the exclusive Quality, the 8th race on Wednesday, is a really terrific race, an interesting group of horses. Just nice to be back at Belmont.
Absolutely. Just Belmont, I'm so excited. I can't wait to get over there.
Belmont Insider MSG Plus Wednesday night. And those cards, at least Wednesday through Friday, are out, drawn, DRF.com. TimeformUS.com. Well, let's get on to the Wood horses. We've got the first 3 finishers in the April 4th Wood dropping out of this race to go on to Churchill Downs. Tappet won the Kentucky Oaks, the Belmont Stakes last year as a sire. What do you guys think, starting things out with Frosted the Gray on the outside?
Well, they got him to rate. He had a throat operation. He wasn't as aggressive as he had been in the past, and he won, and he ran a fast figure. I don't know. He's running for a trainer. His horses seem to be winning every race they've been entered in. Why isn't he a contender?
I think he's a real contender, and I think that's the key, too, having him come from off the pace. You get the complete makeover, the throat surgery, they cut the blinkers back, they changed riders, they changed styles, and it's going to be easier for him in the Kentucky Derby to rate and come with a run because he's going to get legitimate pace to run at.
Yeah, I have to think that this is a horse that's a player. He ran so well in our Remsen last year against the track. And I'll tell you something, there's a bunch of New York breds upstarting here. Tensender took a step forward. I don't see him winning the Kentucky Derby, but he's a horse that could be in that group that could get fourth.
Yeah, maybe he hits the try or super clunks up. I really like seeing George Weaver getting a shot at the Kentucky Derby. I sincerely do. I think he's a terrific trainer.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tensendor has the feeling to me of a horse blossoming at the right time. I think he's really coming on. I agree with you. I don't know if he's good enough to win, but he's the kind of horse, if they ride him to get a check, I think he will get a check. And who knows, sometimes other guys make mistakes and they stub their toe and then you luck into the big check.
Yeah, and I want to briefly touch, and I know we got a lot more to talk about. I don't love the way the jockey thing was handled with CeCe Lopez and El Kabir. I think that he rode this horse very well. He was 3rd best in this race. The owners have every right in the world to put whatever jockey they want on him, but don't go on Twitter and start talking about it like the way they did. I thought it was inappropriate.
I
deserved better.
I agree. I think he deserved better. I think he was told he was part of a team, and then he was unceremoniously dumped. And on top of that, as much as they made of removing him from the horse or they didn't like the ride, they could have handled it a lot better when it came time to make a change. Listen, you can get Calvin Burrell at Churchill Downs. He's won 3 Kentucky Derbies. No one can knock you for that. But I agree with you, the way it was handled.
Yeah. You pay the bills. They can put Jason on him if they want. They can get you out of retirement. But they should have done it.
I said I would take Richie's book going forward at Belmont Park. We move on. Firing line. Gary Stevens, you've got the prototypical sort of Hall of Fame icon in Gary Stevens with the Derby rookie trainer in Simon Callahan, and a horse much like Frosted in any other year might be talked about more. He's almost forgotten about, and I think there's a very good colt.
And I also think that this race is a very good juxtaposition to show just how good horses like Dortmund are. He met some decent enough horses, maybe a comparable field to what American Pharaoh ran against Arkansas, and he just destroyed them.
He destroyed them, and I think he's playing Aladar to
Dortmund's
affirmed. Yeah. I mean, because anytime Aladar got away from affirmed, he would win off like this. Now, I don't want to get letters or emails that I'm trying to compare them to affirmed and Aladar. I'm just saying it's just interesting how impressive he was when he gets away from Dortmund, and it definitely flatters Dortmund.
I think it does, and I'll tell you something. Maybe the 6 weeks, I don't know whether it's going to hurt him or not. I have to consider this horse a contender as of now until we see the post position draw.
Yeah, we'll see what post he gets, and he'll probably be a decent price. You've got a guy on his back that knows what it takes to win the Kentucky Derby, and rookie trainers have won 3 of the last 7 run for the Roses. Let's move it on to the New York bred 3, as you noted, 3 state breds in this year's edition of the Kentucky Derby, and one of them, International Star, was perfect out in the Midwest throughout the winter during prep season.
He's the third New York bred that has a chance to get a piece of this Derby. He's got the right style, running style, to suck up and get a piece. The question is he going to be able to do his running outside of Louisiana? And ultimately, Richie, is he fast enough?
Well, that's, again, we go pros and cons. The cons is he doesn't appear to be fast enough. The pros are he'll run through traffic. I mean, he's seen every situation a horse can possibly see, and he's brave. And in a 20-horse field, let me have a horse that's brave.
I agree, but he's also got those juicy trips in those races, and you can't count him getting it. He's a neat horse. He's an overachiever, but he's slower than Carpe Diem. But I like his running style. I think you agree more than Carpe Diem, and the fact he's done the things he's done, but he has to be considered at best a second-tier contender.
Yeah, he would need a lot of things to go wrong for the main contenders for him to get a piece of it. But just from a jockey's perspective, give me a horse that helps me through traffic like that and doesn't hesitate.
Well, I think that's a good juxtaposition to the next horse that we're going to show, a horse that won the UAE Derby that got a lot of attention because he had a perfect trip in that race.
That is Mubtahij as we wrap things up with Stanford, who battled back gamely. He's a little light on seasoning, and if you're a little flimsy regarding international stars, a top contender, maybe you don't give Stanford a look. But let's get on to the group that ran on the Dubai
Stanford
World Cup undercard, and that is Mubtahij. Here he comes in the yellow and blue.
You know, I know he looked visually impressive, and people went all crazy about this race when it was run, but it didn't get a particularly fast figure. And the other thing is he's got a trip over from Dubai 5 weeks after running this race in Dubai and improved to beat this kind of field in the Derby. Good luck to him.
Well, for some reason, it seems harder on horses coming from Dubai this way than it is going from here to Dubai. For some reason, and I've seen it over the years when Kieran McLaughlin used to winter in Dubai, the horse is coming back. Obviously, this is a talented horse, and he's got some interesting things to look at. He actually beat older horses as a 2-year-old, 3- and 4-year-olds, and the last horse to win the Kentucky Derby, the last horse to have 2 races over 1 1/8 won the Kentucky Derby in Canonero. Now, this horse has 2 races at 1 3/16. I think they're asking a lot of him to be able to come from there and produce the kind of run he's going to need to win the Derby.
And once again, if he was 35-1, you want to take a shot with him,
sure,
go ahead. But he's going to be half that price, and that just doesn't seem like value to me in this Derby.
It's nice seeing Michael DeCock in action, though, at Churchill Downs in the Kentucky Derby. We respect him, a world-respected horseman. There is no question about that. And Belmont Park commences this coming Wednesday. We'll have Derby Day, first race post 12 noon. Do you guys want to give out a pick, or do you want to just wait to see what the posts are?
Right now, my horses I'm looking at, my solid horse is Dortmund, but I like Upstart. He's going to be my top choice in all likelihood. I'll be using him with Frosted, Firing Line, and Dortmund.
I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I agree with a lot of that. Firing Line, I just don't think is going to get anywhere close to the 1 1/4. That's just my opinion.
Fair.
So I wouldn't use him. But all the other horses you mentioned, and listen, American Pharaoh's brilliant. If he gets through the Derby, we keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, no question about it, but I just don't think he's going to be value.
What a great time of the year. The opening of Belmont Park, Kentucky Derby week at Churchill Downs. Hope you guys have a good Derby day, a good week at Belmont. And the same goes for all of you. We'll have our Derby wrap-up a week from now on MSG+. Have a great Saturday at Churchill Downs and Belmont Park. And we'll see you next time right here on MSG+.